The plasma bolt burned through Queen Lyra's shoulder, spinning her against the marble pillar as alien screams echoed through the throne room. Ambassador Vexai's ceremonial robes burst open, revealing military-grade combat armor beneath diplomatic silk. His forearms moved with lethal precision, energy weapons appearing in each clawed hand. "The charade ends now, human," Vexai snarled, his crystalline eyes blazing crimson. "Your species has hidden behind lies long enough." Royal guards dropped from concealed positions, their weapons trained on the Zephyrian delegation. Captain Torres stepped forward, his scarred face betraying nothing, though his pulse rifle hummed with deadly energy. The Queen pressed her hand against her wounded shoulder, blood seeping through her fingers, but her expression remained steady. "You come to my world under diplomatic immunity," Queen Lyra said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "and reveal yourself as an assassin." Vexai laughed, a sound like grinding crystal. "Immunity? Your pathetic species deserves no protection. We know what you really are." His secondary arms gestured sharply, and holographic displays materialized in the air. Star charts, military formations, worlds reduced to ash. "Show them," Vexai commanded his remaining aide, who survived the initial ambush by staying near the diplomatic transport shield generators. "Show them, Kepler, 442b. Show them what their peaceful species did to the Valdris colonies." The hologram shifted, displaying a verdant world that gradually transformed into a scorched wasteland. Cities crumbled, oceans boiled. 17 billion Valdris civilians vanished in nuclear fire. "Impossible," Captain Torres whispered, though his weapon never wavered. "The humans did this?" The voice came from behind the throne, small, confused, innocent. Prince Marcus, only 8 years old, stepped into view despite his bodyguards' attempts to shield him, his wide blue eyes fixed on the terrible images floating above the throne room. "Marcus, leave immediately." "But mother, they're saying we destroyed a planet." The child's voice cracked with disbelief. "We would never." "Silence!" Vexai roared, his weapon swiveling toward the boy. "Let the spawn see what his bloodline truly represents." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every human guard tensed, ready to die protecting their prince, but Queen Lyra raised her uninjured hand. Her movement was deliberate, controlled, and somehow more terrifying than any weapon. "Captain Torres," she said quietly, her voice carrying impossible authority. "Initiate Protocol 7. Torres hesitated. Protocol 7 hadn't been invoked in 30 years. It required revealing classified information to foreign entities, a capital offense under normal circumstances. "Your Majesty." "Now, Captain." Torres touched his comm unit. Security barriers slammed down throughout the palace. The Zephyrian transport's shields flickered and died as jamming fields activated. Within seconds, they were completely isolated. Vexai's triumph turned to confusion. "What are you doing?" Queen Lyra stood slowly, pain evident in her movements but her dignity intact. Blood dripped steadily from her shoulder onto the ancient stone floor. Stone carved from Earth itself, brought across the galaxy when humanity first left their dying homeworld. "You want the truth about Kepler 442b?" she asked. "Marcus deserves to know." "They all do." The child stepped closer to his mother, his small hand finding hers. "What truth, mother?" Queen Lyra looked down at her son, then at the Zephyrian ambassador who still aimed 4 weapons at her family. Her free hand moved to her collar, fingers finding the sealed diplomatic pouch she always wore, the one containing documents so classified that only 3 humans in the galaxy knew their contents. "The truth that your great-grandfather made me swear never to tell." She broke the molecular seal with her thumb. "The truth about why we really left Earth." The documents materialized as hard light projections, displaying humanity's most guarded secret. "This is impossible," he breathed. Queen Lyra's voice remained steady, though tears began streaming down her face. "Kepler 442b wasn't destroyed by human weapons, Ambassador. It was our first colony world. Our children live there. Our future was there." The projection showed the real battle records. Human evacuation ships fleeing desperately as an unknown enemy reduced their new home to ash. The same enemy that had already consumed Earth's dying biosphere. 17 billion Valdris, Queen Lyra continued. There were 22 billion humans on Kepler, 4.2b when it fell, including my husband's parents, including Marcus's grandparents. Prince Marcus stared at the images, his young mind struggling to comprehend the magnitude of loss. We lost? His mother nodded, her royal composure finally cracking. We lost everything, my love. We've been running ever since. The throne room fell silent except for the hum of failing shield generators and the distant sound of plasma weapons powering down. Vexay's forearms lowered slowly, his crimson eyes now showing confusion instead of hatred. If humans didn't destroy Kepler 442b, he said quietly, then who did? Queen Lyra closed her eyes, knowing that answering that question would change everything, not just for her family, but for every species in the galaxy. The enemy that had driven humanity from two worlds was still out there, still growing stronger, still consuming everything in its path. The same species, she whispered, that's been systematically destroying your outer colonies for the past 5 years. Ambassador, Vexay's face shifted through a spectrum of emotions as Queen Lyra's words settled in the throne room. His crystalline features, genetically designed to intimidate during diplomatic negotiations, now reflected something humanity rarely saw from the proud Zephyrian Empire: fear. That's impossible, he said, though his weapons remain lowered. Our military intelligence shows no signs of... Your military intelligence has been compromised for 18 months, Captain Torres interrupted, his scarred face grim. We've been trying to warn your high command through diplomatic channels, but they refuse to listen to inferior human claims. Prince Marcus tugged on his mother's gown, his 8-year-old mind struggling with concepts of war and loss beyond his understanding. Mother, if we lost our worlds, why didn't you tell everyone? Why do the other species think we're conquerors? Queen Lyra knelt beside her son, wincing as the movement sent pain through her wounded shoulder. Her blood had formed a small pool on the ancient stone floor, but she ignored it completely. Because, my love, sometimes survival requires sacrifice. Sometimes leaders must bear the weight of terrible truths alone. She gestured to the holographic display still floating above them, showing the devastated remains of Kepler 442b. When we fled that world, we had 2 choices. Tell the galaxy about the enemy that destroyed us, or let them believe we destroyed ourselves through civil war. But why lie? Marcus asked. Because fear makes people do terrible things, she explained, her voice gentle despite the horror of her words. If the galaxy knew about the Devourers, the species that consumed our worlds, they would have panicked. Billions would die in the chaos. Entire civilizations would fragment. Vexay's secondary arms dropped completely, his diplomatic training warring with the implications of what he was hearing. Devourers? We have no record of such a species. Of course you don't. Queen Lyra stood slowly, her royal bearing intact despite her injury. They don't leave records. They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. She touched her collar, activating another sealed compartment. They simply consume everything, organic matter, technology, even the planetary crusts, and move on. The new holographic display showed sensor readings that made Vex's breath catch. Massive biomechanical structures, thousands of kilometers long, systematically stripping worlds down to their molten cores. The readings were dated just 3 weeks ago. Zephyr 7, Torres said quietly. Your agricultural colony. Population 12 million. Zephyr 7 reported equipment malfunctions last month, Vexhai whispered. Communications blackout. We sent repair ships, and they never returned, Queen Lyra finished, because there was nothing left to repair. The Devourers had already begun their work. Marcus stared at the terrible images, his young mind trying to process the magnitude of the threat. Are they coming here? The silence that followed his question was answer enough. Queen Lyra's expression hardened, the weight of royal responsibility settling on her shoulders like armor. Captain Torres, display the tracking data. The holographic interface shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated Devourer activity, forming an expanding sphere that included dozens of worlds. At the center of the pattern, a single blue dot marked their current location. "They've been moving toward this system for 2 years," Torres explained, "consuming everything in their path. We estimate they'll reach the outer planets in 6 months." Vex High's composure finally shattered. 6 months? Why didn't you warn us? Why maintain the deception when— "Because," Queen Lyra interrupted, her voice carrying the full authority of someone who had made impossible decisions for the survival of her species. "The galaxy needed to believe humanity was strong. They needed to fear us, respect our military capabilities, accept our leadership in building the Colonial Defense Network." "What? Colonial Defense Network?" Vex High demanded. Prince Marcus looked up at his mother with new understanding. "The mining operations, the industrial complexes, the trade agreements that everyone complained about." Queen Lyra nodded, pride and sorrow mixing in her expression. "Every human colony, every military base, every defensive installation we've built over the past 30 years, all designed for one, to create a barrier between the Devourers and the populated core systems." The full scope of humanity's sacrifice became clear. They had accepted the galaxy's hatred, absorbed the fear and suspicion of dozens of species, all while secretly building the defenses that might save everyone. "The scar," Marcus said suddenly, looking at Captain Torres. "The one on your face. You got it fighting them, didn't you?" Torres's hand unconsciously moved to the jagged mark that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "Kepler 442b evacuation. I was 17, serving on a transport ship. A Devourer scout vessel breached our hull." His voice remained steady, but his eyes held memories of horrors beyond description. "I pulled 23 civilians from the wreckage before the bulkhead collapsed." "How many did you save in total?" Vexhay asked quietly. "From Kepler 4-2-B-3. Torres's scarred face showed no emotion. "Out of 22 billion. The throne room fell silent again, the weight of those numbers pressing down on everyone present. Prince Marcus moved closer to Captain Torres, his small hand reaching toward the man's scarred face. "Does it hurt?" "Every day," Torres admitted. "But it reminds me why we fight." Queen Lyra activated her communication array, sending authorization codes that hadn't been used since humanity's exodus from Earth. "Ambassador Vexai, I'm transmitting all our intelligence on the Devourer threat to your ship's databanks. Every tactical analysis, every defensive strategy, every hard-learned lesson paid for in human blood." Vexhay's crystalline eyes widened as the data began flooding his systems. Terabytes of military intelligence, spanning 3 decades of secret warfare against an enemy the galaxy didn't even know existed. "This will take months to analyze," he breathed. "You have 6, Queen Lyra replied. "After that, analysis becomes irrelevant." The Zephyrian ambassador looked at the human royal family, a wounded queen, a scarred soldier, and a child too young to understand the burden he would inherit, and realized he was seeing something his species had never witnessed before. Not human arrogance or aggression, but human sacrifice on a scale that defied comprehension. The plasma wound in Queen Lyra's shoulder had stopped bleeding, but her face had grown pale from blood loss. She swayed slightly, caught herself on the throne's armrest, and continued speaking with unwavering determination. "Captain Torres, initiate the revelation protocol. Send the declassified files to every major government in the galaxy. Your Majesty, that will expose our entire strategic position. Our strategic position is irrelevant if the galaxy isn't united when they arrive." She turned back to Vexhai. "Ambassador, your attempted assassination today will be recorded as a diplomatic misunderstanding. In exchange, you will personally deliver our warning to the Zephyrian High Command." Vexhay nodded slowly, his 4 hands moving to his weapons and systematically powering them down. "They won't believe me immediately. They'll believe the evidence. They'll believe their own missing colonies." Queen Lyra's voice grew softer, more personal. "And they'll believe because failing to believe means extinction for all of us." Prince Marcus looked up at his mother, his young face serious beyond his years. "Are we going to win this time?" Queen Lyra knelt again, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, and cupped her son's face in her hands. "I don't know, my love. But this time, we won't face them alone. Through the throne room's massive windows, the lights of the human capital city sparkled in the growing dusk. Each light represented lives that had been built in the shadow of an approaching apocalypse, families that had flourished while their leaders carried the weight of species-ending knowledge. Vexay watched the scene with new understanding. Every human celebration, every moment of joy, every child's laughter, all of it existed because someone had made the choice to bear the darkness alone. "The scar on your world's record," he said quietly. "It wasn't caused by human aggression. It was caused by human protection." Queen Lyra smiled, though exhaustion was beginning to show in her features. "Every species has scars, Ambassador. The question is whether we let them divide us or unite us when the real enemy arrives." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Captain Torres's communication device crackled to life, with urgent reports from the outer system monitoring stations. "Your Majesty," came the panicked voice of Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. "We're detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something's coming through hyperspace. Something big." The holographic displays automatically shifted to show external sensor readings. The distortions were unlike anything in their databases, not ships in any conventional sense, but vast biological structures that seemed to bend space around them. Prince Marcus looked at the readings with the innocent clarity only children possess. "They're early." Queen Lyra stood, her wounded shoulder forgotten in the face of approaching catastrophe. "Captain Torres, sound general quarters throughout the system. Activate all defense platforms. Send the emergency signal to our hidden fleet elements." "And alert our allies?" Torres asked. "What allies?" Vexay said bitterly. "Your deception was too successful. Half the galaxy considers humanity a threat to be contained. Then we fight alone." Queen Lyra moved to the throne room's central communication console, her fingers dancing across controls that would address not just her own species, but every listening post in dozens star systems. "As we always have." The gravitational distortions were growing stronger. Through the palace windows, they could see the outer defense satellites adjusting their positions, preparing for a battle that would determine whether sentient life survived in this corner of the galaxy. "Mother," Marcus said softly, "what if we lose again?" Queen Lyra looked down at her son, at Captain Torres with his scarred face, at Ambassador Vexay whose hatred had transformed into reluctant respect. She thought of the 3 million human survivors who had escaped Kepler 442b, carrying nothing but the determination to protect others from the same fate. "Then we make sure our sacrifice means something," she said, her voice carrying across the communication system to every human ship, every defensive position, every family preparing for the storm. "We make sure that when they write our story, they write that humanity stood between evil and innocence, between consumption and creation, between ending and hope." The first Devourer scout ships began dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge, their biomechanical forms pulsing with alien hunger. They moved with predatory patience, testing defenses, seeking weakness, preparing to consume another world. But this time, they would find something different. This time, they would discover what happened when a species chose sacrifice over safety, truth over fiction, unity over survival. This time, they would learn why, despite losing 2 worlds and 22 billion souls, humanity had never truly been defeated. The gravitational distortions reached critical mass as the first wave of Devourer vessels dropped into normal space. Through the throne room's reinforced windows, Queen Lyra could see the night sky beginning to change, stars dimming as massive shapes moved between them and the planet, blotting out constellations that had guided human navigation for millennia. Captain Torres's communication array exploded with reports from defensive positions throughout the system. "Your Majesty, we're reading 17 primary vessels, each approximately 15 kilometers in length. Biomechanical composition confirmed. They're beginning preliminary scans of the outer planets." Preliminary scans? Vexay studied the tactical displays with growing horror. "These readings show they've analyzed our entire defensive grid in under 10 minutes. They learn," Queen Lyra explained grimly. "Every world they consume adds to their knowledge. Every civilization that falls makes them smarter, stronger, more efficient." She activated the emergency protocols, sending coded signals to hidden human fleets positioned throughout the sector. But they've never encountered prepared resistance before. Prince Marcus stared at the alien vessels with fascination rather than fear. They look like they're sick, all twisted and wrong. His innocent observation struck at the heart of the Devourer threat. The enemy ships weren't built. They were grown, assembled from the organic and technological remains of thousands of consumed civilizations. Each vessel was a monument to extinct species, a perverse library of stolen knowledge and absorbed life. Lieutenant Commander Chen, report status on the Prometheus Station Array, Torres commanded through his communication link. Fully operational, sir. All 7 stations are locked onto the primary targets. Particle beam weapons charged to maximum capacity. Vexhay's crystalline eyes widened. 7 orbital weapons platforms? Our intelligence showed only 3 defensive satellites in this system. Your intelligence was meant to show only 3, Queen Lyra replied. The galaxy needed to underestimate human military capabilities while we prepared for this moment. The tactical display updated, showing the true extent of humanity's hidden defenses. Stealth platforms emerged from asteroid belts, camouflaged weapon arrays activated throughout the system, and sleek human warships began dropping out of hyperspace behind the Devourer fleet.
Impossible, Vexhai breathed.
The colonial defense network we've been complaining about. It wasn't about controlling trade routes. It was about creating a fortress. Every human colony, Torres confirmed, every mining station, every research outpost, all designed with secondary defensive capabilities. We've spent 30 years turning empty space into a killing field. Prince Marcus watched his mother with new understanding. This is why you were always so tired, why you worked so late every night. You were planning this. Queen Lyra knelt beside her son one more time, her wounded shoulder protesting but her resolve unshakable. Every leader makes choices, Marcus. Every parent makes sacrifices. I chose to let the galaxy hate us so that you might have a future. The first Devourer probe ships began approaching the outer defensive perimeter. These scouts were smaller than the primary vessels, but moved with predatory grace, their biomechanical forms adapting in real time to perceived threats. They're testing our responses, Torres noted. Standard Devourer tactics. They'll probe until they find a weakness, then concentrate their entire force on that point. Then let's give them something unexpected. Queen Lyra's fingers moved across the command console with practiced precision. Activate the Lazarus protocol. Even Captain Torres hesitated. Your Majesty, the Lazarus systems haven't been fully tested. They've been tested enough, she interrupted. And we're out of time for caution. Throughout the star system, dormant installations began powering up. These weren't conventional weapons platforms, but something far more audacious. Devices that could generate localized space-time distortions, creating artificial gravity wells capable of trapping even hyperspace-capable vessels. Gravity mines? Vexhai whispered in amazement. You've weaponized space itself. The first probe ship triggered a Lazarus field and found itself suddenly unable to maneuver. Its biomechanical form writhed against forces that bent reality around it, trapping it like an insect in amber. Human missile batteries locked onto the helpless target and reduced it to scattered organic debris within seconds. The Devourer fleet's response was immediate and terrifying. The 17 primary vessels accelerated toward the planet, no longer bothering with reconnaissance. Their surfaces began to pulse with energy as internal weapon systems charged. Bioplasma cannons, Torres reported grimly. Same weapons that glassed Kepler. 442b. They're preparing for orbital bombardment. Queen Lyra activated the general communications system, her voice reaching every human vessel, every defense platform, every civilian shelter throughout the system. This is Queen Lyra of the Human Colonial Authority. Today, we end our exile. Today, we stop running. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for. The Devourer fleet opened fire, sending streams of weaponized biological matter toward human defensive positions. The space around the planet lit up with explosions, as energy shields absorbed impacts that could have sterilized continents. But humanity's response was unlike anything the Devourers had encountered before. Instead of retreating or hiding behind static defenses, human ships moved with coordinated precision, using the Lazarus fields to create tactical advantages that turned the enemy's size against them. Captain Morrison, execute Pattern 7, Torres commanded. Admiral Rodriguez, Bring your battle group through the asteroid field on Vector 12-7. All Prometheus stations, concentrate fire on the lead vessel's organic segments. Prince Marcus watched the battle unfold with wide eyes, seeing his mother's careful planning transform into desperate reality. Are we winning? We're surviving, Queen Lyra replied. Sometimes that's the same thing. A massive explosion lit up the space near the fourth planet as a Devourer vessel fell victim to a coordinated attack by human fighters. The alien bioship's death throes sent cascades of organic matter drifting through space, the recycled remains of civilizations it had consumed over centuries. But the victory came at a cost. 3 human destroyers had been lost in the assault, their crews vaporized by bioplasma weapons before they could escape. The names of 847 men and women scrolled across Queen Lyra's private display, people who would never see their families again. Vexay watched the human queen's face as she read each name, seeing something his species had never understood about their supposed enemies. You mourn every loss, every single one, she confirmed. Every human who dies today dies so that others might live tomorrow. The battle was far from over. 14 Devourer vessels remained, each one adapting to human tactics with terrifying intelligence. They began spreading out, forcing the human fleet to divide its attention, seeking the weakness that would let them break through to the planet below. Your Majesty, Lieutenant Commander Chen's voice carried new urgency. We're detecting additional gravitational distortions at the system's edge. Something else is coming through hyperspace. Queen Lyra's blood ran cold. If the Devourers had reinforcements arriving, the careful balance of this battle would collapse entirely. Humanity's hidden fleet was powerful but limited. They couldn't face twice their current opposition and survive. The new vessels dropping out of hyperspace, however, bore familiar configurations. Crystalline hulls reflecting starlight, energy weapon arrays charged for battle, the colors and symbols of the Zephyrian Empire. Impossible, Vexay breathed. The High Command received my transmission, Torres realized. They came. But the Zephyrian fleet wasn't alone. Ships from a dozen different species emerged from hyperspace. Altarian cruisers, Centauri fighters, even the massive bioships of the peaceful Verdanian collective, now armed for war. Ambassador Vexay's hands trembled as he watched his own people's vessels move to support human defensive positions. The galaxy heard your message. They understood. Prince Marcus looked up at his mother with pure admiration. Your plan worked. Queen Lyra smiled through tears of relief and exhaustion. The plan was never about humanity fighting alone, my love. It was about humanity proving we were worth fighting alongside. The combined fleet turned the battle's tide within minutes. Alien vessels that had viewed humans as potential threats now fought side by side with human crews against an enemy that threatened all sentient life. The Devourers, for the first time in their species' memory, found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. All ships, Queen Lyra broadcast to the combined fleet. Concentrate fire on the primary vessel. End this. The last Devourer ship died in a cascade of light that was visible from the planet's surface. Its biomechanical form, constructed from the remains of countless extinct civilizations, finally fell silent. The threat that had chased humanity across the galaxy, that had consumed 2 human worlds and billions of lives, was broken. In the throne room's sudden quiet, Prince Marcus looked at the tactical displays showing victorious Allied ships moving to secure the system. Is it over? Queen Lyra considered his question carefully. The immediate battle was won, but the Devourer threat likely extended far beyond this single fleet. There would be other battles, other sacrifices, other moments when sentient species would need to choose between survival and extinction. This battle is over, she said finally, but our real work is just beginning. She activated the communication system one last time, addressing not just the human colonies, but every species that had answered humanity's desperate call for unity. Today, we learned that the strength of civilization isn't measured in weapons or ships or tactical advantages. It's measured in our willingness to stand together when everything we've built faces destruction. She looked at Ambassador Vexay, who nodded with newfound respect. The Human Colonial Authority formally requests to join the Galactic Council, not as conquerors or threats, but as partners in the work of protecting all sentient life. Captain Torres's scarred face showed something it hadn't displayed in 30 years, hope. Prince Marcus took his mother's hand, looking out at the stars where human and alien ships moved together in formation, and understood that the scar on his world's reputation had finally begun to heal. The galaxy would remember this day not as humanity's victory, but as the moment when species-old prejudices gave way to something more powerful than fear. The recognition that survival itself depended on unity against forces that sought to consume everything worth protecting. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been hidden fleets or secret technologies. It had been the willingness to sacrifice everything, including their own reputation, for the chance that others might live. And that sacrifice, Prince Marcus now understood, was what made them truly human.